So, new revelations from inside Britain's main migrant reception centre have raised serious security concerns as a whistleblower at the Manston facility in Kent say many boat migrants ask immediately when they get there, where is the hotel, highlighting migrants' expectation of accommodation upon arrival. Staff describe a system overwhelmed by numbers, lacking proper identity checks and unable to verify criminal histories. Under strict protocols, workers are reportedly told not to speak openly about their family amid growing fears for public safety and national security. To discuss this, I'm really pleased to welcome international security and border control expert Henry Bolton. Good evening, Henry.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hello, Henry. Henry, I read this story today and I must confess there were many things that just weren't a surprise to me. The first one that we just mentioned, that the first thing these migrants ask for when they arrive is, where is my hotel? And that just reinforces to me, and I'll be interested to hear what you say, that the pull factors for people to come here are too great.
Indeed. I've been saying for years, literally years, and persistently, that if we don't, there are push factors why people leave where they come from. There's facilitation and, in fact, marketing and encouragement of the movement itself, and then, which is the criminals, and then there is the pull factors. What is it about the United Kingdom that makes this an attractive destination to come to? And there are a myriad reasons as to why that is. But we provide these people, without asking any questions effectively, without demanding answers, without sort of confirming the answers that we get, we give people access to a whole range of services that other countries do not. Now, of course, we don't get all of the people who enter the European Union or cross the European Union's borders, but we get a pretty high proportion compared to other countries. So, that is the reason. It is because, indeed, we're a soft touch. Now, the security issues are also legion because, as you've quite rightly said, we have no idea who probably around 90%, 95% of these people actually are. I'll give you an example. Albanians have reduced slightly, but give you an example. Albanians come from southern Serbia, the Republic of Northern Macedonia, Kosovo, and Albania itself. They all speak Albanian. It's all in the same region. They can answer questions as to sort of the towns in the region and so on. And it is only by having quite an intimate knowledge of the dialects that you can tell where within that southern Balkan region these people come from, which country. So then how do you get them back there? Because any country can deny knowledge, any of those four countries. So, we've got a mass of problems. And the only way to address these pull factors in a straightforward, simple manner is actually to detain them all, not in somewhere like Manston, and not in a variety of different types of accommodation, because they will compete, they will exchange notes, just as kids, in an exam will. If somebody's come out of an exam or of an interview, the people waiting to go in, if they get the opportunity, are going to say, okay, what did they ask? What's the answer? And it's exactly the same. So we've got to detain these people behind wire, ideally somewhere like Ascension. I know that's expensive, logistically heavy, but if we don't do that, then we are creating a threat to the British public, as is evidenced by the fact that the Home Office is telling its staff not to discuss personal matters, which is sensible, of course, with these people, as is evidenced by Keir Starmer's admission, basically, that we've got Iranian cells operate here in the United Kingdom. So there's a whole range of things that need to be unpacked, but we've got to secure these people, secure them until we can get rid of them, or they ask to go back to whence they came. And that means legal change as well. So it's complex, but it can be done.
I agree with you, Henry, to a degree, but I wonder, do we need to go as far as the Ascension Islands, which isn't really set up for these people? There's a lot of them coming, 1,000 since yesterday, and we would have to fly them there, which would be logistically difficult. Why can't we put these people into locked detention centres here until they are processed on site?
Because I think that there is still then, I am in the United Kingdom. I am on British territory. I'm here. And that is going to encourage them. And we are going to have, when they're sitting here, we're going to have protesters outside. We're going to have all sorts of things going on, all sorts of we have a succession of governments And we have a House of Commons and Westminster occupied by people who, frankly, have no determination, no real courage. They don't have the will to solve this, and they will be then submitted to a barrage of legal and efforts and protests to see these people to see the whole thing softened, and they will compromise.
Yeah, fair point, Henry. Will?
Yeah, Henry, I agree. And this, of course, was a key pillar in the Australian response to this problem, where the government at the time said, look, by the time they hit the Australian mainland, it is already in some respects too late. Another thing that Tony Abbott said at the time is the very simple message that if you attempt to get on a boat and enter Australia, you will never, ever permanently settle in the country. I don't understand what is the reticence of the British government not to say the same thing.
Well, it's a legal one, just quickly. It's a legal one primarily. We're still in the European Convention of Human Rights. It's a political hot potato as to whether we should stay or should leave. Certainly leaving would remove a whole range of obstacles and legal opportunities to appeal deportation or the Australian model. One thing that's very important, though, if I can say, on the Australian approach, the migratory dynamics down there are different to here. And the boats that were being used were robust boats that you could actually put a boarding party on. And you could take control of that vessel. You cannot do that in the Channel with a dinghy with maybe 40, 50 people on there. You can't, there's no room to get a boarding party on there and take control of the thing. So there are operational difficulties that make it different. And there is the legal context. Australia was never in the ECHR. So there are some differences, but you're right as to how you deal with the people who do actually get there.
Henry, I mean, everything you've said makes sense. I guess what it does is it takes us back to before July with the Rwanda scheme, which we didn't try. So there are people on this panel who will tell you it failed, but I'm not sure how you can say that when we didn't try it. Do you think if we'd have been able to get planes off of the ground to Rwanda, that would have been the deterrent?
If the legislation had been properly drafted, I know for a fact that the then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was briefed that there was a massive, or it's a small but very significant loophole in the legislation that was always going to undermine the Rwanda scheme. He decided to ignore that repeatedly. It's one of the issues Robert Jenrick resigned over. And as a result, actually, as it was the legislation existed, Rwanda could not work properly. However, the principle, the mechanics of it, yes, it could have worked to an extent, but we didn't have control over Rwanda. We do have control over our overseas territories, such as, tongue-in-cheek, we could have put them on the Chagos Islands and sold them all to Mauritius, couldn't we?
Well, I guess we could have done. I mean, I guess one more question, really. If the Home Office accept that these people are dangerous enough, that they're telling their own staff to not divulge where they live, where their families live, because they might be at risk, why are they then not a risk when they are released into the public?
Good point.
Of course they are a risk, but you're not going to get a Home Office minister admitting that they are releasing people into the public space who are a risk. We know that they are a risk. We know that across Europe, terrorist offences are being committed by asylum seekers. We know that sexual offences are being committed by asylum seekers at a higher proportion than, if you like, the domestic population. We know that a lot of these people in the United Kingdom go into work for organised gangs, particularly sort of running drugs around the country and so on. And just as a police officer would never, I'm a former police officer, would never divulge information about themselves to offenders, it's a sensible measure. But there is an underlying threat, and this acknowledges that threat. And there's another reason why we should be detaining these people securely. We have no idea, really, who they are or what threat they pose to the public.
Well, exactly. Henry, that's really interesting. Thank you so much for your time tonight and for joining us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.